On this edition of Kababayan Today, PhD candidate Chiara Paz talks to us about her academic journey in education and the expectations of Filipino-American families on their daughters. That's all next on Kababayan Today. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Ako po si G. Tonji at nanunood po tayo ng Kababayan Today. Dahil buwan na ng Setyembre, ang ating tatalakayin sa buong buwan na ito ay education. Lalo na dito sa ating komunidad at ang mga expectations ng mga magulang sa kanilang mga anak na nag-aaral sa kolehiyo. And since it's the month of September, a lot of families are experiencing going back to school. Because of this, the month of September here on Kababayan Today is placing an emphasis on education in our community and the expectations of Filipino parents on their children studying in higher education. Since the 1960s, Filipinos have constituted the second largest immigrant population in the country. And they are the largest Asian origin immigrant group here in California and in the nation, according to Rumboldt and Portes, a study done in 2001. The number of Filipino immigrants in the United States has not doubled but tripled between 1980 and 2006, from over 500,000 to 1.6 million, exceeding the Chinese, Indian, Vietnamese foreign-born count. That's almost half. 45.8% of Filipino immigrants resided in California in 2006, while the other 54.2% primarily populated in Hawaii, New York, Illinois, and New Jersey. While these statistics may imply that Filipinos are a very visible group in the U.S., the truth is that they remain invisible in educational institutions and in mainstream America. Today, the invisibility of Filipinos and Filipino Americans remains, and they are further categorized as honorary whites and model racial minorities. And this lack of public attention is especially salient in institutions of higher education. Ngayong araw na ito, kausap natin ang mangungulat ng nag-research at nagsulat ng papel na ito na pag-uusapan natin na pinamagatang Making Meaning of Parental Influence Among Pinays in College. She explains to us her feminist with a P framework and her feminist, di ba? Not an F, and what this entails. Here on Kababayan Today, let's please welcome Chiara Paz.
Hi, G.
Chiara, maraming salamat.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Today, since it's September, we're talking about education, and who better to have on the show? I met you in the academic setting.
Yes.
Okay, so I know, let's give a background of your education. You grew up in the Philippines, born and raised.
Exactly. So I was born and raised in Quezon City, and I studied there in Catholic schools for most of my life. I was in Poveda until I graduated in '97. Went on to Ateneo for like a year, and then moved to the U.S. in 1998.
And here in California.
Here in California. And then I went to a community college for 2 years and transferred to UCLA in 2000 and finished in '03. And then went on to my master's, finished in '07, and now I'm in a PhD program.
Yes, and you've got just a short way to go. You've been in academics for so long.
Yes.
Okay, so this is what I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Because you've done so much research, and it looks to me that a lot of the research that you're doing has to do with us being Filipino Americans in education. Okay, there are a lot of problems that we can talk about. Let's start off with why is there so much emphasis placed on education, especially when you come from a Filipino American household?
Right. Well, as we know, we're a big immigrant community, right? And so a lot of the history of immigration of Filipinos in the U.S. stemmed from wanting to study here and wanting to get educated here in order to go back to the Philippines and give back to the community there. Then over time, people just started immigrating for a better life.
Yes, even after school, they didn't go back because there are more opportunities here.
Exactly, and then families trickled in, and then before you know it, you've got second, third, fourth generation Filipinos. And then their parents obviously want a better life for them.
And they know that education is the way to get out of poverty.
Exactly, and so that they saw that as an instrument to be able to say, well, this is what I could impart to you as my daughter or my son in order for you to have a more prosperous life.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what did you major in as an undergrad at UCLA?
I was a psychology major and then an education minor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you wanted, for your master's, what did you take for your master's?
So I was on the psych route, so I wanted to become a therapist.
Okay.
And, you know, the parental expectation was, well, you know, maybe you should be a doctor. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll be a psychologist that's kind of a doctor. And then I minored in education.
Right.
And that's where I fell in love with it. And that was a struggle. Education was not seen as something that's lucrative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because why are you going to be a teacher? You be a doctor, right? Why are you going to be a teacher?
Yeah, so that was kind of a challenge to explain that. And so, you know, eventually my parents were like, okay, I get that we are going to have a person in education, but we don't exactly know what that means.
Right. So what does that mean?
And so I told them, well, you know, I really wanted to help other students of color come into college. Because as we know, there's underrepresentation of students of color in universities. And so that's what I wanted to do. And so they're like, so what degree will you get? Right? And so that's when I said, okay, well, maybe I'll get a master's, maybe get a PhD. And that's where the compromise set in.
Maybe? Oh my goodness, just to get a master, just to graduate college is such a challenge nowadays, you know? You're going all the way.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Well, thank you
I
so
have to
much.
say. And UCLA is not a, you know, not an easy school to get into, and you're taking it all the way.
It's a journey. It's certainly a very interesting journey.
There are definitely challenges. I want to
Yes.
hear all
Yes,
about the
of course.
challenges. I also want to talk about that paper that was so
yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
that you wrote, okay? So pagbalik natin, kasama pa rin natin si Chiara Paz. Dito lang po yan sa Kababayan Today.